Welcome to Choosing Leadership, a podcast for leaders who refuse to play small. I am Sumit Gupta, founder of Tengen Partners. I am here because I see too many brilliant leaders trapped in daily firefights. Too many companies hitting walls that they do not need to hit. Too many people waiting for weekends instead of waking up every day excited to go to work. And very frankly, that is unacceptable to me. At Tengen Partners, we are an unapologetic call to excellence. This podcast is not about giving you more content. It is about shifting the context under which you operate. Because leadership is not a position. Leadership is a choice. In each episode, I will bring you conversations with leaders who have made these choices, the uncomfortable ones, the courageous ones, and the ones that changed everything for them and their companies. And with that, keep listening and let's get started. Hi, Lawrence. Welcome to the Choosing Leadership podcast.
Nice to meet. Thank you. And good seeing you again.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you here. You are the CEO of MyWheels. But I want to hear your backstory, right? Where do the dots connect that lead you to where you are today?
If I see what brought me to this role that I'm doing today, it is that I learned also in my roles that I make a distinction. You make a distinction between, okay, there's companies that bring something to society or they take something from society. And I've worked for both kind of companies, but it made me become aware that I am in much better position when I work for a company that actually gives something to society. So with MyWheels, long story short, I'm in a role now where I can again help to drive change, but also in a company that actually brings something to society.
Tell me more about this, right? When was this realization for you that there is a company that I want to work with or there's a company I don't want to work with?
Yeah. How should I say? It actually already started long ago when I was a headhunter. I was about to sign a contract with an American company to become a marketing manager with a very cool brand, B2C. A headhunter approached me and said, wait, I want you to meet another company before signing. And I asked, okay, which company is that? Yeah, it's called Tetra Pak. And I had no clue what Tetra Pak is all about, but it's actually not B2C, it's B2B. And it was not about a marketing role or a brand role. It was about a sales role. I said, why should I talk? Please go and talk. And you might assume I chose to work for Tetra Pak. And why? Because it is a typical Swedish family owned company with a long-term view and a much broader responsibility felt than not only making the financial work and of course to earn a decent profit to sustain, but also, like many Swedish companies, taking a very broad responsibility also towards the community, towards suppliers, but also to Mother Earth, so to say. And that was already at a very early stage that made me become aware how important that for me is, how much that relates more to my values. So that was one distinct experience.
Yeah.
Over time, I also learned to work, for example, so I have experienced the contrast because prior to joining Tetra Pak, I worked for another American company. So I experienced that contrast. Anglo-Saxon American approach, I would say, is quite financially focused, more individualistic rather than the collective approach. Eventually, I also had quite some experience as private equity. And I'm so grateful for all these experiences, but they shape your view on and your deep felt desire to understand where you probably are best placed to contribute, which is aligned also with your own values.
Yeah. And does that present some conflicting choices? Like when you are, let's say, thinking about joining a company, there could be factors like compensation. But even when you are running a company, there could be factors like which vendors to choose or how to move forward in a market, right? There could be something which is easy or cheap compared when you think financially, and it maybe helps you do good profit, but it's not holistic, right? So this value system, what conflicts or difficulties have that presented to you in terms of choices?
There is, in organizations, especially where change is needed, patterns and symptoms. And there's a tendency in many companies, and it's very tempting to go into symptom solutions because that's then the quick, but these are most of the time quick fixes, and they always come along with eventually with side effects that you did not anticipate, rather than taking the approach deeper and to go into fundamental solutions. But guess what? They are taking more time, they take more risk, and there's more uncertainty. And companies nowadays are so much designed around control, predictability, and it has to be delivering results shortly and quickly. And I think in that stretch between the temptation of falling back into symptom solutions, rather than really going deeper and embracing the uncertainty and the not knowing in trying to find the fundamental solutions. I think that's a constant, yeah, dance, I would almost say.
Yeah. With MyWheels, it's especially in the media, it's known as a car sharing company. What do you see about what MyWheels is and what your work here represents that probably doesn't get spoken enough?
And I think car sharing is a relatively new way of fulfilling needs for mobility, but it's also difficult to, if you only take it from a car sharing perspective, you can take easily too narrow view on this. And I think it's important that we are in many different ways in our society challenged to find the courage to really make larger systemic transitions. And although so small, it still can really add as a piece to a larger transition, a systemic transition, not just in mobility, but also, for example, in energy. And I explain it in a bit, but therefore, it's not just car sharing for the sake of, I don't just have not ownership and that's fine. And then I can share cars. Great. That's it's always a philosophical approach of your way of living. But no, it's actually really also a solution to a small step into a larger solution of these larger systemic shifts that we want to accomplish. And why I say this, for example, we are living in Holland as a very highly condensed country. We are faced with not just only net congestion that many people speak about, our electricity net is just too full, but also street congestion. And the two are really actually now not just making our society being challenged in to keep it pleasant places to live, but also economically, it starts to really now hurt us. And the platform that we offer with shared cars, electric cars, that also have batteries with vehicle-to-grid technology, are helping to release the pressure on the streets congestion. But with those batteries also help to release the pressure on the net congestion, because we can help when peaks are high to bring back electricity to the grid out of the battery of the car, which is pretty revolutionary. And we have done it now for the last year in Utrecht, and it really proves to actually have an impact. So the city of Utrecht now, we have been calculating, and it's peer reviewed, that with only 1,000 cars, we can already reduce the net congestion with 5%, which is significant. On top of that, if you go even further, because this is let's say the vision for ourselves and the strategy for the next 3 years, with the energy transition, we can also help with the mobility, also with the energy transition. But I think the other part is that eventually, also in Holland, we will be transporting ourselves with autonomous vehicles. And whether it's in 5 years or in 10 years, we don't know. We have learned that exponential technology development is not always easy for humankind to predict. But those platforms operating shared cars are perfectly well suited to operate eventually also the autonomous fleets. And with that, we envision that, for example, public transportation in rural areas could be much cheaper, much more efficient, be replaced by fleet of autonomous vehicles. And again, car sharing companies like ours could eventually play a role in operating those fleets. So sorry for the long answer, but I hope.
Yeah, but that's a much bigger vision than just being a car sharing company. And I think that also expands new markets or new opportunities for you to grow as an organization as well.
Yes, absolutely. And it's also that transition that makes me tick is change. That's the change that I want to drive. That's the vision that I, and together also the owners of our company have. And it's exciting to really help an organization go through that change.
Yeah. One of the things with a vision like that is, can your employees speak about it? So a question would be, especially for you as a leader, if I speak to your employees, will I hear the same vision back, or will I hear I am in marketing, I am in tech, and we are this or we are that? And many times I have seen that relates to many problems or challenges which organizations face in the long run, right? So what has been that journey for change, but the change in people's language, the way they think about an organization, the way they speak about that organization, and what do you see the challenges for you as a CEO to bring that language, bring that new vision into the normal everyday thinking and thoughts of your normal employees?
Yeah, I do believe I'm now almost 2 years now in this role, and I've been repeating this. I think it's very much about repetition and keep it simple. So these, as we call them, the horizons in our strategy. So the vehicle to grid horizon and then the autonomous horizon. We have been repeating that continuously. So my sense would be that most of our colleagues are aware and also excited about that vision. I think the challenge is to balance that and don't be there too often either, because then it can distract from the here and now, because we are still challenged by running a company that still is in need of transition also in our systems, transition also in our fleet, transition also in our organization. So there is also this very short-term steps we need to make to create a healthy base for this company. So it's always a bit of a healthy tension of having this inspiring vision where we are heading for, yet at the same time also the results we want to accomplish together in this next quarter.
Yeah. And one thing which I have seen many times is that a vision can pull you away from just fixing problems or just the small details, and actually help you build something from scratch, which many times is not an improvement or not a change over the past or a process or a system, but something totally new that can actually replace it and create something much, much better from a business functioning point of view. Have you seen something like that, or are you moving towards something like that?
I do believe that AI, for example, is a great tool to invite yourself to take one step back and see, hey, what can we actually do completely different now? And with the help of AI in a much faster or smarter way. And that's at least how we try to deploy AI. And that's also why we really made it available, not just for the people responsible for technology in our organization, but actually in a much broader way, everyone that really has a good reason to explore has access and has the opportunity. And we also really encourage to use in order to actually have what you describe on a smaller basis in specific departments.
Yeah. Can you share an example of where AI has been used, which has been actually beneficial to the business in some way?
Yeah. For example, thanks to AI, the customer care department together with the operations department were much better able to get, based on the data, have a much more distinct insight of the impact of, because we have mainly electric cars, of the consequence of batteries that were not well loaded, so with insufficient range. And we didn't have that on the radar properly. And thanks to AI, we could run the analysis much quicker. We could also, with AI, make a system that cars that are actually at a certain level of battery, that we can much easier make adjustments. So we avoid the 10%, which is our thought currently, the calls to our customer care center that were actually related to a battery that was not at the right level. So this is an example that comes to mind.
Yeah.
But not orchestrated by me or the leadership team, but really buttoned up by the teams themselves, being able to do these queries easily with the help of AI and conclude together, hey, this is an interesting insight. Let's see, what can we do about this?
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Coming back to what you said, you're completing 2 years and you have been a CEO before. What is it that probably is part of your habits or part of your personality that you have to let go, especially with MyWheels, but also with everything new that is happening around us, including AI?
In regard to AI, and what I find very interesting in let's say the old world, from what I've been acting from before this role, I would have looked for more experienced people to help make the next step in this company. But with AI now coming into the sphere, I realized it's sometimes a disadvantage to be that experienced, because you already narrowed yourself in your view. And it's also the experience comes with age, and how older you become. Yeah, it's a factor of life, but the more difficult it is actually to change and try new stuff. But to really deploy AI in a powerful way, it requires really the curiosity and the energy and the vulnerability that you find very often with young people, and less when people are already a well-established role. And I think that's an interesting, the dynamic as well. So if you that has changed now. That idea I've left with my previous role. I really find it now as a CEO an interesting task to take a different view on that. How do you balance a team between experienced and actually really young people? I have a son who's 13, and what I see what he can do with AI in building his own game with people he never met, remote, and that they attract players. And that makes for me really something visible, along with the examples that I just shared with you in that I'm experiencing in MyWheels. I think that's fascinating. And back to your question, that comes to mind of that's something I really left from my old role now in this new role.
Yeah. You also speak of wisdom, like wisdom quotient, but experience is a big component of that wisdom quotient, right?
Yeah.
And obviously there is a new technology and there is energy, which is, let's say, found more often in younger people. But what has this done to your ambition? And where have you applied your wisdom in saying, okay, there's a new technology, it will probably shape every industry or every organization in the future. So does that change your ambition? Does that make your ambition grow? And where do you slow down? Where do you focus and say, okay, no, this is a distraction?
It is something you need to navigate through all this.
Yeah.
And I do sense that in the end, I could try to give you a perfectly well phrased rational answer to that. But I do sense that actually the true answer is more than anything, it's intuition that helps you to guide that and navigate in the best possible way. You sense your instinct, your gut is telling you. And with that, I connect already to that inner wisdom that myself, like anyone, like you and anyone else, has available. It's just a matter of feeling comfortable to give access to that.
But I will ask you, what is your intuition telling you about the future of the organization? And has it changed your ambition? Has it changed the way you are thinking about the next 1 year, the next 3 years, in terms of growth or in terms of expansion or whatever?
When I look at, and again, when I sense the organization, but also when I rationally look at the organization, we are just started. It makes me really excited because I sense we are building something very powerful, and that is along with the right choices in regard to where we focus, and with the help of also our mother company, but also some other partner elements here and some suppliers. It's more than anything else, the people that we as a team have brought together that dare to make me look forward and be actually really excited about what potentially could be accomplished together, yet continuously being aware to do not fall the trap of the symptom solutions, because we have still many symptoms of continuous challenges in our business, but always make sure we go deeper and find the fundamental solution. And that continues to be a challenge because, it's uncertain. There comes risk along with that, and it takes more time. But when we continue to be altogether aware of that, I feel very excited about the future. Also given what's happening in the outside world. And this is rational and factual, but you can see that now governmental bodies, whether it's national, whether it's local or even European, car sharing is really now considered and also explicitly mentioned as one of the solutions in how to change, make this larger mobility systemic shift that we want to accomplish in larger cities in Holland.
And what would be one specific possibility that you see that excites you, and maybe one which scares you?
What excites me, I can see that I have been grown up in a world when I joined companies. You hope that you also were one of those employees that could have a lease car. It was
Yeah.
an important perk. And what I really see happening now is that companies, but also employees, they don't value a lease car anymore as in my early days in my career. It's not fulfilling the needs of the employees anymore. They want more modular mobility solutions, but also the companies become more and more aware. We don't want to commit to long-term lease obligations with cars that are on our parking lot when an employee has left, because employment at this era is much shorter than, let's say, 30 years ago. But also for the fact that the CO2 emissions of a company, there's many reasons. So that excites me.
Yeah.
And the other question was, so that's the excitement. The other question was,
is there a possibility that you see that scares you?
yeah, what scares me, we are in a way depending also on trustworthy governmental bodies. We invest heavily in our cars, electric cars, and we have already experienced this in the city of Amsterdam, that it was announced that by January 1st, 2026, only electric shared cars will be allowed for whatever reason, but then they postponed. And our largest competitor did not invest in expensive electric cars, but just continue to have, the congestion engines. And that created for us a real competitive disadvantage and brought actually quite substantial risk, because then you invest anticipating on a trustworthy, city body, but in the end, it changes all of a sudden perspective. And I do believe we are in a better shape right now, both nationwide as well in the larger cities in Holland. But it has been a feeble time where, and I think this is a general comment from businesses all around in Holland, that which also made Holland as a country not that attractive anymore for foreign companies to invest in, because we are not that reliable anymore as a governmental policies, which is very bad, by the way. But that's a risk I could see that also attaches that to trust as well, potentially.
Yeah, in fact, this would be the second consecutive interview that I'm interviewing somebody, and this topic has come up that the Dutch government is too slow, unpredictable. There's a lot of rules, and that presents, especially for entrepreneurs, challenges to move fast.
Yeah, too slow as well. So it's unpredictable, but it's also too slow. Because, of course, maybe you are not changing your promise, but if you take so much time to actually really implement it, it can be also that time costs money.
Yeah, especially with the vehicle to grid technology, right? It's
correct.
Going to be the future of, we need more batteries one way or the other everywhere, because the future is electric, the future is sustainable. And if Netherlands is slow, because this is almost an open market up for grabs. Are you looking at outside the Netherlands, or are you looking at a bigger market to expand into, or is that something which is still somewhere in your future plans and not in the immediate ones?
It's in the future plans, but not in the immediate plans. Yeah.
Is there what would be the thought process behind that?
I would say foremost, because we are not even really started here in Holland.
Yeah.
I mean, we launched it in Utrecht. We're now starting to launch it in Amsterdam, although that is going slow. Here we go. We are in good progression in other cities, but Utrecht has been now really accomplished. But now we're just about to start in other cities. So it's too early to expand abroad, I would say.
Coming back to you, right? Share something about yourself that probably most of your colleagues or people around you would not be aware of.
I think comes to mind, but I do sense they are aware of that I really see the need to really incorporate nature in one's personal life. But I think that's a too safe answer for him. And I have to say that most colleagues should be aware of this, would be aware of this, I would guess. I think maybe that I'm politically actually quite engaged. I keep that quite low, but I'm having strong view, and I'm not very actively engaged in one or another specific party. And also given my role, I think I have to be careful to being there too much explicit, but I have a clear view there. I think given my role, I should be careful in sharing that. That would be something that they are most likely not aware of. Yeah, I don't know if that's the kind of answer you were looking for, but that's...
No, I think that's a good and honest answer, right? Because we were just talking about wisdom and intuition and the planet, right? And you have a role, right? You are CEO of an organization. you and me, we are also citizens, right? Not just of a country, but also of the planet. And then there is a responsibility which you were just talking about, right? It's a company which gives and not just takes. That is probably not just like a fiduciary responsibility. It is something extra. It is something which comes from that wisdom or that intuition, maybe not just from the financial institutions. So how do you navigate that balance, right? One is, if I am a leader, I want the freedom to speak, right? Because otherwise
Mhm.
I am not happy, or it eats me up, right? If there's a topic, I have an opinion and I hold myself back. The
Mhm.
second thing is what you said, right? Yes, there are risks. You have a role, you have a
Mhm.
responsibility. And if you just speak, yes, there could be something, right? So how do you, and this could also happen within the organization, right? You're speaking to your team or an employee, and there is a topic which could present that kind of a dilemma. How do you, how much, like, how do you balance honoring your truth, your own wisdom versus the dynamics which are in front of you?
Yeah, what I try to do is that I try to be as close, and that's also, I think, also partly why, for example, I enjoy, but also consciously cooperate in when you invite me to have this conversation and sharing that with other people beyond just the two of us. Because I do feel it's important to be to show as much as possible to the human face as a leader. Yet at the same time, I also sense that one has to be aware that when you share something, you should never forget that the position where you are at in the organization should give a different weight. And there already starts the fact that what you share will always be the way how you share and how it is received. There's always in between, something happens that is not completely predictable, but it will be not completely, maybe always in complete sync. And the stronger you make your comment, the bigger the outliers could be. And I think one has to be careful to create too many risk for outliers that maybe you even didn't want to bring that message across how it was received, but by the fact that you are in a certain position, that it might be something that is still for many people not easy to digest or to understand. It's the combination that makes it that it's delicate. You have to be continuously sensitive. What's the bandwidth here that I can within which I can be confidently being as open and clear as possible.
Yeah, it makes sense. But I have an example. I have probably a counter example, and I will share that and ask you a question around that. I was in a group of CEOs and business leaders, and this was probably a couple of years ago. And there were few members from the Extinction Rebellion there. And the way they spoke, if there was a bandwidth, it was outside of that bandwidth of that room. And I think I am talking to you about that example because I would not have remembered whatever that person or that message was if they had been, if they have adjusted their tone or language to fit in the room that they were in. And I have seen that many times that kind of language or that kind of energy is required to break through something
Yeah.
which is so traditional. So, do you see a future where we can speak more openly, like whether in an organization or in a society, and not hate each other or not fight each other, but still debate each other, but without also already compromising or tailoring our words to fit the audience rather than to express what we really want to express?
I have to say, I do sense I feel pretty comfortable in opening that bandwidth and not being too safe. But to give you an example, I foresee larger shocks that we have to anticipate as society. And that's partly because of geopolitical shifts, power shifts, China versus
Yeah.
the US, and what play Russia and India and the Northern Hemisphere, the Southern Hemisphere. There will be shifts, and there is actually a risk of war, even in our Western world. I see that climate change, I don't have a crystal ball, but I can foresee that there is a risk of huge shocks also from climate change. In my role as a CEO, this is my personal belief. This is also why I'm, by the way, so motivated to work for a company that can actually bring something to at least, have a solution there rather than being part of the problem. Yet, if I make this too strong in my role, in the position I have, with the authority, quote unquote,
Yeah.
the bandwidth that I then it's hard to predict what that will do with people that are part of my organization. If I, in my role, share with the repetitive style and make the words even bigger and more dramatic, and that's what I more mean. I have to be careful there. I have to be sensitive.
And I think it comes back to that wisdom.
My daughter is asking me, "Yeah, oh, that's fine. Yeah, but sorry."
You don't have to be sorry about that. That's the beauty of life that we live in, and how easy it is to separate our lives, right? But I would say that's the beauty of our life, that we can just slow down and see the person in front of us for the person, and not the task or not the responsibility or not these big topics that sometimes we talk about.
True, but in all honesty, my wife also just entered the room and I didn't give any attention to her. So there's still something to learn from.
What is one question that you hoped that I would ask, but I haven't asked?
Yeah, what roles companies can play in societies? Because I think that in these current times, if I may ask that question,
Yeah.
I think obviously we live in interesting times, but there's a lot of anxiety creeping into our systems, creeping also into our companies and our organizations, in our organizational systems. And that anxiety closes also the openness to meet one another and to connect one another and collaborate with one another, because that's the only way how we can come to solutions and innovation to fulfill the larger challenges we're facing and to really make these systemic shifts that we anticipate that we need to make. And in a sense, companies have an important role to play, and leaders in those companies have an important role to play to create that space and holding that space, initially for their own organizations and maybe other organizations that can possibly collaborate with, but eventually actually even to hold space for society together. Anticipating these larger shocks, it's really also businesses that have an important role to really start collaborating and talking less about growth, but talking more about stability. So how do we make sure that we hold that space and make sure that social contract, which is so valuable, is not disconnected, because we were not able as society to absorb the larger shocks. And I think businesses really have an important role to play there. And that starts also eventually with leaders to be aware of that and change that perspective.
Yeah.
And that meaning.
Yeah. And I think growth is a very important point here, because many times growth is seen as creating anxiety, but stability can actually increase the growth, right? Stability can actually lead to better growth, because people are more grounded, people are more confident, and they can focus better and not lose themselves in just overthinking or distractions.
Yeah, and a very statistic example that comes to mind. I have a sense that we always think about this tree that has to grow higher and higher, and we just forgot about to look at the soil, which became drier and drier. And once that's too dry, and there's insufficient nutrition in the soil, it's too late.
Thank you for sharing that. And this was a wonderful conversation. To wrap this up, right, what is the best way for somebody who might be listening to this to reach out to you or to find out more about what you are up to, not just in business, but also in the vision that you described, in the role that businesses can play in a society?
Well, first of all, Sumit, thank you to you as well. A real pleasure to have this conversation with you. And if people would like to continue the conversation, I'm on LinkedIn. And when they send me a direct message and refer to this podcast, I will make sure I can respond.
Thank you, Lawrence, for the conversation. I will include your LinkedIn profile with the show notes. But this was a real pleasure for me, right? Because I do believe that what we're talking about, kind of two ends, one is stability, one is holistic, and one is growth, expansion, new technologies. I think that it is not two distinctions. It is the real power of the benefit is in merging and going together, and not just debating about young or old or energy or wisdom or new technology or old technology, but to really merge it together and to not even sacrifice growth, but also at the same time, as you said, the soil needs nothing. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you. Absolutely. It was a pleasure. And I wish you all the best for everything that lies ahead for you.
Likewise. Thank you, Sumit. Take care.
Thank you. That's it for this episode of Choosing Leadership. Here is what I want you to know. You are capable of so much more than you currently think that you are. And that is not because I have all the answers. That is because I have lived it. I have gone from hiding behind a comfortable tech career to building companies, coaching CEOs, and standing for impossible dreams like taking India's volleyball team to the Olympics. So if this episode hits you, if it resonated with you, share it. Tag someone who needs to hear this. Tag someone who is currently playing smaller than you know that they are capable of. And if you are a leader ready to play the biggest game of your life, if you are ready to make those 100 million jumps, then reach out and let's talk about being a guest on this show. If you want to go deeper, visit tangentpartners.com or find me on LinkedIn. Once again, remember, mediocrity is a choice and so is excellence. I'm your host, Sumit Gupta, and until the next time, keep listening, keep choosing leadership.